A few days later, Sejun Park was suddenly woken up by the little rabbits. It turned out that Mr. Rabbit had discovered that the carrots in the farm had matured, and they were even infused with the energy of the blue moon. With the little rabbits eagerly anticipating, Sejun Park reached out and pulled out the blue moon-infused carrots, which looked very enticing. Although only one carrot has ripened early, its full name is the agility carrot with blue moon energy, which is a higher grade than the previous magic cherry tomatoes. Consuming it increases agility by 0.05. By harvesting the E+ grade carrot, Sejun Park gained a lot of experience, and his harvesting skill also increased by 2 levels. After checking the effects of the agility carrot, Sejun Park turned and handed it to Mr. Rabbit. Thanks to their hard work, the farm has achieved its current success. The rabbit family's eyes were filled with desire upon receiving the carrot. Seeing this, the 4th sibling, Scythe Bunny, signaled to their father, who then flung the carrot into the air. The next second, Scythe Bunny executed an amazing move, and with numerous blades flashing by, the agility carrot was divided into 7 pieces, each accurately landing in the hands of the little rabbits. Such cool knife skills instantly earned praise from everyone. Seeing his brother showing off, Black Warrior Bunny acted unimpressed. This blue moon not only yielded the agility carrot, but also produced 5 blue magic cherry tomatoes. Administrator Aileen, who had been observing, immediately issued a task, and Sejun Park promptly turned over one of the tomatoes, fulfilling his previous promise. However, when Sejun Park expressed his desire for an occupational skill, Aileen indicated that it might be available in a few days. Aileen's response left Sejun Park puzzled, but before he could think further, a meow nearby caught his attention. It turned out that Teo, who had sold all the cherry tomatoes, had returned, but his arrival was mistaken by the honeybees as that of an enemy, probably because they had never seen Teo before, hence the hostility. So, Sejun Park held Teo in his arms and conveyed to the honeybees that the little cat was also part of our family. Seeing this, the honeybees then continued their work. Thanks bro, meow. Hearing Theo address him as a brother, Sejun Park pinched his little face. What, bro? Did you just call your boss bro? Realizing his mistake, Teo apologized and handed Sejun Park the money he had made, totaling 75 dungeon coins. But that wasn't the end. Teo then pulled out another bag of dungeon coins, saying, I raised the price of the magic cherry tomatoes, and now there's an extra 30 tower coins. Teo thought his performance might restore his position as CEO. Despite not wanting to, Sejun Park still called Teo my intern, and the payment was still only 2 dungeon coins, and even gave Teo a scolding. Out of helplessness, the little cat could only lament that becoming CEO was not easy. Saddened, Teo then took out a cat treat and happily licked it, which caught Sejun Park's attention. Turning his head to look at what was in the kitten's hand, Sejun Park asked in surprise how Teo had gotten it. The honest little cat detailed to the greedy boss how it had gotten the cat treat by taking photos with humans, while he shared some with the little rabbits. Hearing that it was given by humans, Sejun Park thought of the Black Tower rules he had heard before. There are only 2 situations in which items from outside the tower can enter. One is like him, having brought items when summoned, and the other is when awakened hunters bring items in, limited to only about 1 kilogram's worth. However, there are no restrictions on taking items out of the tower. Any item can be taken out. Due to the limitations when entering the tower, hunters usually only bring practical items, like a solar-powered hunter phone, hunter food, and hunter square cigarette for smokers or stress-relieving snacks when climbing the tower. Sejun Park was surprised that someone would choose to bring cat treats to the Black Tower. Thinking of this, Sejun Park came up with a good idea and then stared at Teo with a mischievous smile. The kitten thought Sejun Park wanted to eat too, so it handed over the cat treat. Unexpectedly, the greedy Sejun Park snatched it all away, making the little cat quickly grab Sejun Park's clothes and ask him to return the cat treat. Seeing this, Sejun Park said, Teo, the cat treats you got from taking photos with humans. According to the previously signed Special Clause 3, you cannot independently develop new customers. Hearing this, the little cat was instantly dumbfounded, as the greedy contract was simply a catastrophe. Next, I would like to discuss new clients with Teo the CEO. Hearing Sejun Park's proposition to let him be a CEO for an hour, and that if he performs well, he can be one for an extended period of time, Teo was successfully tricked. Immediately, Sejun Park picked up the little cat and placed it in his arms. Nearby, a little rabbit was fanning the air. The rest were grilling fish for it. Such is the treatment for a CEO. Sejun Park personally tore open a cat treat and fed it bit by bit to Teo. The treatment of a CEO made the little cat forget itself. After a while, the little cat comfortably stretched, and then it wanted to eat the grilled fish personally cooked by Sejun Park. Sejun Park happily agreed and began to cook by the fire. While grilling, Sejun Park asked Teo how he managed to reach the 38th floor without fighting monsters. Teo showed the badge on his chest. This is the peddler's certificate. To maintain the status, an expensive fee must be paid annually. The higher the level, the more dungeon coins need to be paid, and the more benefits received. Not only do they get protection from the association, but they can also use various facilities and are not attacked by monsters. This is one of the privileges that a peddler has. Sejun Park wondered if he could bring hunters here so that he could also be rescued. Teo shook his head. Only peddlers are not attacked, and moreover, it would be impossible to get here from the 38th floor in only 5 days without the peddler's pathway. Hearing this, Sejun Park asked what floor they were on, only to be shocked when Teo said they were in a cave on the 99th floor. This statement stunned Sejun Park. Seeing Sejun Park's reaction, Teo was puzzled. Didn't he know his own location? But now, Sejun Park was shocked senseless by the 99th floor, and since Teo couldn't bring people here, it seemed he would be trapped here forever. Just as Sejun Park was at his lowest point, the little cat Teo quickly stepped forward, grabbed his face, and shook it vigorously to bring him back to his senses. Sejun Park had thought he was empathizing with his distress, but it turned out that his fish had burned. After grilling another fish for Teo, Sejun Park started thinking again. The hunters have just made it to the 40th floor, and he is on the 99th. He might as well give up on leaving the tower. Meanwhile, Teo, unaware of Sejun Park's mood, continued to direct him to grill the fish properly. Seeing this, Sejun Park no longer obeyed, as an hour had already passed. Teo, who hadn't had enough of being the CEO, could only sigh softly. Then, Sejun Park noticed the peddler's certificate badge. If I had one of these, then I could go out and do business with Teo. He quickly asked Teo if he himself could become a peddler, as Sejun Park began to fantasize about them making big sales. But he was met with the kitten's ridicule. Only individuals born inside the tower can become peddlers. That's basic common knowledge in the Black Tower. Hearing this, Sejun Park felt like thunder had struck on a clear day, and he couldn't stop shaking. Then, he couldn't help but shout, "Damn it, screw this dungeon." Angry, he cursed the Black Tower loudly, and even the administrator Aileen heard him. But after venting, Sejun Park deflated. Although he was accidentally sucked into this cave, it was initially his decision to enter the Black Tower. Since he was here, enduring hardships was inevitable. Now, Sejun Park finally firmed up his resolve. Meanwhile, in the human world, some merchants eyed the magic cherry tomatoes greedily, seemingly planning to exploit this item. After learning about his situation from the little cat, Sejun Park knew that leaving the tower would be difficult. Prepared to stay, he needed to resolve practical issues one at a time. Currently, he was most in need of some necessities, and he also had to confirm the safety of the surrounding area. The little cat said, "The area around the cave is very safe, but just a bit farther away, there is Crimson Grizzly Bear." Hearing this, Sejun Park recalled his previous terrifying encounter, which very likely involved the same bear. Teo was particularly afraid of it, because every time they passed by, the bear would glare at him fiercely. It seems that going out is still too dangerous. Now, the planting area in the farm is expanding, and soon thousands of cherry tomato flowers will bloom. As the number of flowers increases, so will the number of poison honeybees, which could allow the little honeybees to scout the surroundings and also keep some monsters away from the cave entrance. Meanwhile, Sejun Park finally thought of a good way to get out, which involved making ropes from onion leaves and then having the honeybees tie them to a tree outside the cave. This way, he would most likely be able to leave from here. After planning his next steps, Sejun Park began to delegate tasks. Getting necessities could only be managed by Teo, and he then informed the little cat of the importance of this task and that only it could accomplish it. Teo confidently accepted, saying, "There's nothing that Teo the CEO can't do." Several days later on the 38th floor, what used to be a deserted avenue was now filled with many adventurers encamped. Teo had also arrived here, and seeing more humans than before, the little cat understood that the fame of the magic cherry tomatoes must have spread. But for him, this was perfect. The more buyers, the better. Immediately, Teo jumped in front of everyone, which startled the adventurers. But once they recovered, they all rushed towards the little cat. Teo greeted them happily upon seeing their reactions. Just then, a man forcefully pushed through the crowd and took out a bag of dungeon coins, wanting to buy all the magic cherry tomatoes. Seeing this, the previous guild members instantly disagreed, as they were Teo's regular customers and had been the first to arrive. As they were arguing, Teo spoke up to stop the adventurers. The little cat announced that from now on, the way magic cherry tomatoes were sold would change. Hearing this, the adventurers stopped their dispute and asked Teo what he meant. The cat told everyone that the magic cherry tomatoes would be auctioned in 3 batches, each containing 500 pieces, and only the highest bidder would be able to take them away. So, if you don't have money, you can go back now. The first round of the small tomato auction will start immediately. Teo setting the starting price at 35 dungeon coins. This method was informed to him by Sejun Park. He speculated that the news of the magic cherry tomatoes had spread outside the tower. When a product is in high demand, but limited in quantity, auctioning is the best way to make money. Besides this, he had also arranged other tasks for Teo, which was also a good opportunity to assess the little cat's business acumen. After a rest, Sejun Park resumed his work, and the little black rabbit went to prepare dinner for the day. However, at this time, the Black Tower administrator issued a task, and this time there was finally a reward. But Aileen needed a cup of magic cherry tomato juice with honey. Since making tomato juice was time-consuming, Sejun Park told the administrator he would make it after he finished his other tasks. seconds, but the administrator insisted it had to be done now, emphasizing that the task had to be completed immediately. Seeing this, Sejun Park didn't know if she was showing off the reward or just wanted to drink the cherry tomato juice, and he even asked if the skill could be given to him first. The administrator revealed that the reward could only be received after completing the task, as it was a rule in the Black Tower. Considering the administrator's eagerness, and because Sejun Park also wanted to see what the skill was, he immediately set out to squeeze the magic cherry tomatoes. This new beverage from the farm had previously been made by Sejun Park, and after adding honey, it received great reviews from the little rabbits. Picking up a sufficient amount of magic cherry tomatoes, Sejun Park took a deep breath, and the next second, he squeezed all the magic cherry tomatoes with all his strength. Next, he asked the queen honeybee to complete the final step, to which the queen honeybee gladly agreed, and then she produced pure honey. Then she slowly controlled the honey glob, and with a plop, it dropped into the tomato juice, thus completing a simple cup of honey small tomato juice. The message indicated that the administrator was so excited that she flapped her wings and took the tomato juice away. Meanwhile, Aileen was happily drinking the tomato juice, and the sweet and sour taste made her linger fondly. After enjoying it, the administrator gave Sejun Park a big thumbs up. Having completed the task, Sejun Park gained a new understanding of the administrator. With the system message popping up, Sejun Park received a special occupational skill, beekeeping. He had been worried that the little honeybees might not follow him after leaving the cave, but now with this skill, he could effectively communicate with the honeybees. Seeing this, Sejun Park was thrilled. Could it be that the administrator had specifically intended to solve his worries? Hearing Sejun Park say thank you for the first time, Administrator Aileen was momentarily stunned, then her face even blushed. Aileen said if he really wanted to show his gratitude, another cup of honey tomato juice would be enough. Sejun Park, still in the cave, had another question he wanted to know. Combining previous hints, he asked if the administrator was a pig with wings. Hearing this, Aileen's face, which had just been happy, instantly darkened. This was the most insulting thing she had heard. The next second, Aileen furiously rebuked Sejun Park through messages, and after finishing her tirade, she simply disappeared. Seeing this, Sejun Park was left feeling somewhat perplexed. Meanwhile, on the 38th floor, when adventurers heard that the magic cherry tomatoes needed to be auctioned, they hesitated for a moment. Seeing this, the guild leader Dongshik panicked. If he couldn't bring back the magic cherry tomatoes, his status as a father would revert to what it was before. Dongshik no longer hesitated and immediately offered 41 dungeon coins to buy 500 tomatoes. Seeing his team members confused, he made it clear that the priority was to secure the magic cherry tomatoes. Then, if needed, the team members could buy from him later. However, even after raising the price, other adventurers did not give up. The previous man shouted an even higher price, and hearing someone else competing, the rest of the adventurers started bidding. Dongshik hadn't expected these newcomers to be so wealthy, and he thought about crowdfunding with his team members. Just then, a loud voice startled everyone as a man shouted a bid of 100 dungeon coins. The bidder was the chairman of a large food company from outside the tower. Hearing such a high bid, Teo instantly counted down, going once, going twice, and the deal was made. Dongshik was surprised by the appearance of Michael. He wasn't supposed to be here. However, he soon saw a familiar face behind Michael. It was Chris from Dongshik's own Phoenix Guild, but he clearly remembered that Chris's group was supposed to be on a rotational break. Chris, feeling apologetic, explained that it was his sister who had asked him to bring Michael here. Understanding the situation, Dongshik realized the whole story. Chris's sister, Jenny, was the CEO of a pharmaceutical company, and it seemed that the news about the magic cherry tomatoes had fully spread and was now being targeted by big businesses. After delivering the first basket of magic cherry tomatoes, Teo quickly initiated the second round of the auction and was very pleased with the outcome. The second round of the auction on the 38th floor had already begun, with the starting price still at 35 dungeon coins. Dongshik initially shouted a high bid of 60 dungeon coins, but Michael bid 100 dungeon coins again, which greatly surprised Dongshik. Not wanting to return empty-handed, Dongshik tried to borrow money from his teammates, but unfortunately, Teo had already finalized the deal. After handing the second basket of tomatoes to Michael, the little cat announced the last round of the auction, but before he could even start the bidding, Michael again bought them all with 100 dungeon coins. Hearing this, Dongshik knew he had no chance. Seeing the saddened team captain, the nearby teammates comforted him to wait for another opportunity. Michael, who got the magic cherry tomatoes, was very satisfied. Years of doing business had taught him to recognize the excellent quality of the magic cherry tomatoes. As Teo was preparing to leave after selling his goods, the adventurer Suha and her friend came looking for him. The little cat looked at the girl in front of him. He only remembered that she had given him a cat treat but had forgotten her name. However, seeing Suha again made Teo very happy, as Sejun Park's task could be completed with Suha's help. Even so, Teo's confusion appeared cute in Suha's eyes. Just like before, she took out a cat treat to take a photo with the little cat, but remembering Sejun Park's instructions, Teo resisted resisted the temptation and declined Suha's offer, mentioning that this time he didn't want a cat treat but needed something called coffee. Hearing this, Suha took instant coffee out of her bag. Having achieved one of his goals, Teo then asked her if she had any salt and pepper. His request puzzled Suha and her friend, but fortunately, they had indeed brought these seasonings into the Black Tower. They then gave the requests to Teo, who happily thanked Suha on the side. Before Teo left, Sejun Park had said that if someone wanted to take a photo with him, he should ask for coffee, salt, and pepper, as these would determine how long he could be CEO. After packing the items into his rucksack, Teo and Suha happily took several photos together. Looking at the many beautiful photos in her hand, Suha thanked the little cat for cooperating. Teo waved his paw to thank her for taking care of business. Seeing Teo's plump paws, Suha couldn't resist pinching them a few times, loving the soft feeling. However, Teo, observing Suha's actions, asked her what she was doing, worried that the little cat might dislike it. Suha quickly offered a cat treat as compensation, and hearing Suha say that touching his paws made her happy, Teo's big eyes showed some disbelief. Hearing this, Teo believed that his paws actually had such an effect. Meanwhile, Suha's friend also wanted to take a photo with Teo, as she was the one who had given the pepper just before. Upon this, Teo gladly agreed. After taking the photo, just as the girl was about to thank him, Teo even proactively stretched out his two paw pads for her to touch, saying that touching them would be fine as long as she gave him some compensation. In this way, the little cat completely indulged in this kind of physical trade. At this moment, he had even traded his paws for many snacks. Teo felt that with his own paw pads, becoming CEO for a few hours was nothing. He could do it for a whole day with ease, as he would surely exceed his performance targets. Teo then remembered he had other tasks to do and was about to continue when, as the girl was editing the photos, Teo suddenly appeared behind her, startling Suha. Teo came to ask if Suha was from the Republic of Korea. Hearing that the little cat somehow knew where she was from, Suha was perplexed. Teo had figured it out because she smelled similar to Sejun Park. Teo then asked her for a favor. Despite her confusion, Suha agreed. Meanwhile, at the farm, the little honeybees were happily collecting nectar, transporting part of the harvest to the containers prepared by Sejun Park. With his beekeeping skill, every bit of nectar Sejun Park collected also helped improve his familiarity. Since acquiring the beekeeping skill, and with the increase in the number of tomato flowers, the queen honeybee spawning had also accelerated, so lately, it had been hard for Sejun Park to see her. Reopening the beekeeping skill message, all his abilities had slightly improved, and the number of beehives he could have had increased to 2. It seemed he would need to prepare bigger containers in the future. If only he had more bottles, but those were considerations for later. Right now, he was preparing to eat. After pulling out the carrots, Sejun Park called over the rabbit family to eat. Today also happened to be the day when ordinary carrots were ready to be harvested. Looking at the ripe carrots, the little rabbit's eyes were full of anticipation. Sejun Park distributed carrots to each of the little rabbits and then prepared to dine with his friends. Picking up an ordinary agility carrot in his hand, he checked the system message. The ordinary agility carrots are only E grade, but fortunately, like the magic cherry tomatoes, they can break down fats but also improve vision. Once the harvest increases later on, taking them to market will surely be a big hit. After eating, they began to transport the mature carrots away. Sejun Park was responsible for picking, while the little rabbits carried them to the storage point. In the middle of this, Black Warrior Bunny suddenly fell to the ground. Mr. Rabbit and Sejun Park initially thought he was tired, but it turned out that Black Bunny had taken the opportunity to sneak a carrot, which prompted his father to kick him. Looking at the full warehouse, Sejun Park thought about ending work early today. Just then, the system suddenly popped up many messages and notified him that he had reached level 10, but immediately there was also a triggered task. Sejun Park was about to inquire when the administrator explained that this was not her doing. Aileen stated that this was a level 10 occupational quest, which would grant a new occupational trait. Sejun Park had heard of exclusive job tasks before. The requirements for each task vary depending on the profession. Since his job was Black Tower Farmer, Sejun Park decided to have the little rabbits help him clear new land. Finally, by evening, Sejun Park had completed the task. The little rabbits were all exhausted, and Sejun Park himself was completely drained. Fortunately, the occupational trait he gained was very practical, which somewhat comforted him and made the swift completion of the task worthwhile. After a hard day, they were ready to rest early. After saying goodnight to the rabbit family, Sejun Park went to sleep, but just as the little rabbits were about to enter their home, Mr. Rabbit and Mrs. Rabbit stopped them, and even went as far as to shut the wooden door firmly. Despite the little rabbits crying and making noise outside, Mr. Rabbit did not respond to them. Seeing this, Sejun Park went back to ask what had happened, and after understanding the situation, he expressed strong approval of Mr. Rabbit's method. After all, they had already grown into adult bunnies. It really was time for them to become independent. But now it was getting late, so Sejun Park invited them to rest with him. Soon, the little rabbits came to Sejun Park's big bed, and sleeping with them felt really nice because it was truly warm. Meanwhile, on the 38th floor of the Black Tower, Dongshik was worrying about getting scolded by his daughter for not being able to buy the cherry tomatoes, but Suha came up behind him with Teo. It turned out that the little cat had some matters for which it sought Dongshik's help. Knowing that he was the most formidable captain from Korea present, Teo extended his paw to ask if he wanted to sign a contract. Upon meeting Dongshik for the first time, Teo directly handed him a contract. He wanted to make a deal with Dongshik, the terms of which involved exchanging 100 dungeon coins for cash, then transferring it to Sejun Park's family in the socio-district of Bucheon, Korea, and to inform them that Sejun Park was doing very well. As for the compensation, it would be 200 magic cherry tomatoes and a small amount of dungeon coins. Seeing the magic cherry tomatoes, Dongshik's eyes lit up, because if he could take the magic cherry tomatoes back, then he could once again be the best dad in his daughter's eyes. Taking the contract, Dongshik was curious about who this Sejun Park was. Could he be a hunter who is currently unable to leave the tower? Seeing this, Teo was about to blurt out, but quickly remembered Sejun Park's instructions not to tell anyone that he was on the 99th floor. Upon hearing this, the little cat said that Sejun Park had saved him on the 40th floor, which is why he was running errands for Sejun Park. Hearing this, Dongshik was shocked to learn that someone had already reached the 40th floor. It seems that the magic cherry tomatoes were an item found by that person. To this, Teo did not provide an answer. Even if the entire Phoenix Guild led by Dongshik mobilized, they could only reach the 39th floor at most. He had never heard of such a powerful hunter through official channels, which means the other party was a strong solo hunter. If this could lead to a connection, it might be possible to bring Sejun Park into the guild, and even securing exclusive rights to the magic cherry tomatoes wasn't out of the question. Thinking this, Dongshik decisively agreed to sign the contract given by Teo, and immediately took out a pen to write down his name. With the help of the system, their contract was thus established. Contracts in the Black Tower are effective even outside the tower. However, to ensure the message was conveyed properly, Dongshik arranged to meet here in 10 days and also asked Teo to make clear to Sejun Park that he, Kim Dongshik of the Phoenix Guild, guarantees to fulfill the contract properly. The next morning, in the cave, the little rabbit's house was nearly complete. Black Warrior Bunny then led Sejun Park to visit. Upon seeing the scene in front of him, Sejun Park's eyes lit up. The little house built by the little rabbits was indeed very exquisite and pretty, with onion leaves for the roof and durable mud walls. It looks like this was the handiwork of Sickle Rabbit and Shovel Rabbit, and the two rabbits responded proudly to Sejun Park. Even the simple resting nests were well constructed, and Sejun Park affectionately patted the little rabbits. To celebrate their housewarming, Sejun Park decided to throw a feast for the little rabbits today. After preparing the food, Sejun Park happily raised his glass to toast to the hard work of the little rabbits. Black Warrior Bunny received special treatment from him as a thank you for always providing high-quality fish. At this moment, looking at the carrot cup in his hand, Sejun Park once again admired the craftsmanship of the little rabbits. However, the rabbit couple up ahead were attracting too much attention, making Sejun Park very curious. He suddenly felt that something was amiss. Why did the rabbit couple seem so in need of private space? Sejun Park figured it out and then said to the little rabbits, they are probably going to have new siblings soon. Just then, a system notification arrived. It was time for the seed store to open. Busy with farm work, Sejun Park had almost forgotten about this, so he quickly opened the seed store. This time, the store offered him 3 choices: strawberry, lettuce, and potato seeds. Seeing the lettuce, Sejun Park's eyes lit up, but the thought of pork belly lettuce wraps had to be put aside for later. For now, potatoes and strawberries were under consideration. Although he had enough money, the store only allowed the purchase of one type of seed. After some thought, Sejun Park decided to buy the potatoes, as carbohydrates are more satisfying. As a large bag of potatoes appeared out of nowhere, the next seed store opening would require waiting another 30 days. Looking up at the bag filled with 100 potatoes, Sejun Park suddenly felt something was very wrong. The next second, the bag fell towards him. Fortunately, at the last moment, he managed to dodge. Otherwise, he might have been injured. The loud noise also disturbed Mr. Rabbit's cozy time. Seeing the angry Mr. Rabbit, Sejun Park apologized. Turning around, he began to sift through the potatoes with his hands, carefully examining them for a while. Sejun Park confirmed that the quality of these potatoes was definitely very high. Thinking of the various potato dishes they could enjoy in the future, he and the little rabbits were very excited. Thus, Sejun Park decided to rest well today and start working hard on planting potatoes tomorrow. And now he suddenly remembered Teo, wondering if the little cat had completed the task he had entrusted. Meanwhile, in the middleman zone of the Black Tower, many locals were busy at a market. At a general store nearby, little cat Teo was muttering about household items while flipping through items with his cat paw. It wasn't long before Teo pulled out a pot and a ladle. After asking for the price and hearing that both items together cost 1.6 dungeon coins, Teo asked the shopkeeper to give him a discount. Seeing this, the shopkeeper realized that Teo must be a new peddler who was new to this area, so he gave Teo a discount of 0.1 dungeon coins. Hearing this, the little cat looked disappointed and and asked for a bigger discount. The shrewd shopkeeper knew he couldn't lower the price further, so he said that was the lowest limit. But Teo, having learned well from Sejun Park, immediately tossed the items back to the shopkeeper and turned to leave. Seeing this, the shopkeeper hurriedly stepped forward to stop the little cat. He hadn't expected Teo to walk away so decisively. Realizing he had met his match, the shopkeeper said 1.3 dungeon coins would be fine. Unexpectedly, Teo then knocked off another 0.1 dungeon coins, and the shopkeeper, with no other choice, agreed. The little cat quickly placed the money on top of a wooden barrel, then hastily ran off after saying thanks. But when the shopkeeper looked down at the money, he was a bit puzzled because there was a moist mark left on the barrel, along with a few obvious drops of sweat. Around another corner, Teo was sweating profusely and his heartbeat had accelerated countless times, but he was extremely happy because he had really done it. He haggled without getting ripped off. Teo excitedly raised his cat paw. This was the method Sejun Park taught him to avoid being a sucker. The gist of it is to always bargain, no matter what the initial price is. If the merchant doesn't agree, then leave without hesitation. If the seller calls you back, come back and bargain again. Teo had seriously noted down these techniques in his notebook, and now he had really applied them and achieved success. Although it was only a few dungeon coins, it was enough to make him a smart peddler who knows how to bargain. Happy Teo leisurely strolled down the main street, but as he approached a small alley, Teo heard that voice he detested. Focusing his eyes, it indeed was Scarum, who had sold him fake goods before. Seeing that he was once again using a vacuum flask to deceive novice peddlers, Teo angrily yelled, "Scarum, you despicable stinky goblin." His voice startled Scarum, and Teo angrily walked up to him. Although puzzled as to why the little cat was here, Scarum still pretended that they were familiar with each other. Seeing this, Teo directly pushed away the goblin's arm and told the merchant in front of him that Scarum was a scammer. Upon hearing this, the goblin immediately objected, believing he had kindly sold Teo an item at a low price, only to be met with ingratitude. Hearing this, Teo became even angrier and promptly explained that the cup's insulating property was not due to any magic, but was just a piece of junk. At this moment, Scarum broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't know how Teo had come to know the truth, but his immediate concern was to preserve his reputation. Unexpectedly, the little cat directly called over a nearby patrol guard, telling them there was a goblin here scamming people. Seeing this, Scarum dropped a harsh remark and quickly fled the scene. After exposing Scarum as a scammer, the merchant in front of him thanked Teo and asked for his name. Proudly stating his own name, Teo then waved his hand and left the place. What he didn't know was that the novice peddlers he had just interacted with was eyeing him sharply, and then the merchant quietly said, "Mission suspended." At that moment, there was noise from the roof above her. In the next second, 3 animal police officers arrived in front of her. The peddler slowly took off her head covering and reproached her subordinates for not doing their job properly. One of the police officers, a white cat, was also puzzled as Teo had come out of nowhere, but seeing their boss's displeased face, it quickly apologized. The little fox in front of them was actually Jairus, an agent of the Secret Investigation Bureau of the Peddlers Association, who had been preparing for months to finally arrest Scarum. Jairus felt helpless, and then she ordered everyone to return to the Bureau headquarters. Given the failure of this mission, these officers need to write a 100-page after-action review, as everyone involved today needs to reflect seriously. Jairus's demeanor frightened her subordinates into trembling, and she slowly walked out. The Peddlers Association had already investigated information related to the unscrupulous merchant. Through continuous tracking, they had finally pinpointed Scarum. However, due to the lack of direct evidence at the moment, and not knowing how he acquired illegal products from outside the tower, they could not rashly proceed with the arrest. That's why Jairus pretended to be a novice peddler to get close to Scarum. Just as the plan was about to conclude, it was unexpectedly disrupted by the little cat. However, through Teo's relationship with Scarum, Jairus thought of another plan. Next, she plans to start with Teo to find evidence to capture Scarum. On the other side, Teo, heading to the 99th floor, was blissfully eating grilled fish, happy to have helped others. Meanwhile, in the cave, Sejun Park was teaching Sickle Rabbit how to chop potatoes. He needed the little rabbit to cut the potatoes into 4 pieces. After some demonstration, Sickle Bunny understood what Sejun Park meant. With a quick slice, the next second the potato was evenly divided into 4 pieces, which pleased Sejun Park very much. Next, he moistened the soil and then placed the cut potatoes into it, thus completing the planting process. Dividing the 100 potato seeds into 400 for planting also benefited from the information he had previously seen on the internet. Shortly after, having cultivated a 30 square meters potato field, thanks to his occupational trait, Sejun Park also gained some experience points. After some time, the potato planting was mostly complete. Now, Sejun Park organized the little rabbits to go dig up sweet potatoes, but before that, there was one more thing to do. They needed to collect sweet potato stems because planting these stems would allow new sweet potatoes to grow. Hearing this, the little rabbits immediately collapsed on the ground, wishing they could eat without having to work. Seeing this, Black Warrior Bunny suddenly thought of something. When they were younger, longer. They wanted to plant sweet potato stems, but Sejun Park had actively stopped them, so this time it was likely to be the same. Hearing Black Bunny's analysis, they all started snickering, thinking they could get away with being lazy. However, Sejun Park quickly understood their wishful thinking and immediately said, "This time I don't plan to enjoy planting the sweet potato stems alone. I want everyone to work hard together." Upon hearing this, the three rabbits all sighed. Following this, the little rabbits began to get busy. Mrs. Rabbit and Sickle Bunny were responsible for cutting the sweet potato sprouts. Cart Bunny continued as usual with the transport work, and Black Warrior Bunny, who had no tools, was already out of breath. Sejun Park, on the other hand, took on the planting work. Finally, with all their efforts, they successfully cultivated a 420 square meter sweet potato field. Thanks to Sejun Park's occupational trait, he does not need to plant alone anymore because he gains experience from making new farmland. Just then, the rabbit couple suddenly raised their hands, and the little rabbits also hummed along beside them, singing and dancing around Sejun Park. It turned out this was a harvest dance the rabbits were performing for Sejun Park, and even the administrator was looking forward to roasted sweet potatoes just like them. Receiving his friend's blessings, Sejun Park eagerly looked at the earliest planted sweet potatoes, and then slowly began to brush away the soil with his hands. However, a dazzling light burst forth from the ground. Seeing this, Sejun Park was greatly shocked, and even the queen honeybee was blinded by the light. When the golden light dissipated, a shimmering sweet potato appeared on the spot where the cave had been. Its full name is the solar sweet potato, a result of a genetic mutation in sweet potatoes due to being exposed to the sun at the 99th floor. Eating it can break down 100 grams of body fat, and it also makes you immune to the cold for 24 hours. Sejun Park also made an achievement within the tower. Seeing this, he came back to his senses, realizing that a new variety had been born. Meanwhile, at the same time in Korea, Dongshik had arrived at the building where Sejun Park's family lived, and at that moment, Sejun Park, along with his friends, was staring at something on the ground, this brand new crop called solar sweet potato. Through the system message, he also realized that he had grown a new variety. The Black Tower also acknowledged that he had monopoly over the sales of the new crop variety. Without Sejun Park's permission, others cannot grow solar sweet potatoes. Although he was eager to taste it, since it was a new variety, he decided to plant more first and wait until there was a larger quantity before eating. After arranging the solar sweet potato, Sejun Park and his friends began digging for more sweet potatoes. The subsequent sweet potatoes they unearthed were all of the normal variety. Right after digging them up, Sejun Park couldn't wait to wrap them in leek leaves to roast. In no time, a batch of delicious roasted sweet potatoes was ready. Slowly breaking open a sweet potato, Sejun Park didn't eat the first bite himself, but gave it to his hardworking friends. The rich aroma made the little rabbits drool, but unexpectedly, Mr. Rabbit choked because he ate too quickly. The Black Tower's administrator was also drooling with envy, and Sejun Park was thankful that she waited for the little rabbits to start eating first. Soon after the rabbit family was full, Sejun Park handed 10 roasted sweet potatoes to Aileen. After finishing most of it, looking at Sickle Bunny beside him, Sejun Park asked that if they have finished eating, they could come help him handle the roasted sweet potatoes. Meanwhile, Aileen had already peeled a sweet potato and immediately popped it into her mouth. In just a few minutes, she had devoured all 10 roasted sweet potatoes. The gluttonous Aileen was considering asking for the remaining ones too, but looking down, she saw that Sejun Park was busy with something else. In the cave, Sejun Park, with the help of Sickle Bunny, had cut the roasted sweet potatoes into strips. Next, after they dried on one side, they would turn them over to dry the other side, and the delicious dried sweet potatoes would be ready. Seeing this, the administrator was quite angry. She didn't understand why they were cutting the roasted sweet potatoes and tossing them on the ground. Hearing this, Sejun Park explained that he was making another delicacy, which was dried sweet potatoes. At the same time, in Korea, Dongshik knocked on the door in front of him. The next moment, Sejun Park's family hurriedly opened the door, thinking it was Sejun Park returning. However, once they recognized the visitor, the family was stunned. Then they inquired who Dongshik was. After some explanation, Dongshik handed over his personal business card from the Phoenix Guild. Seeing this, Sejun Park's brother was greatly surprised because the Phoenix Guild was very famous in the country, and with Dongshik's position as the team leader, he was indeed considered a top hunter. After the pleasantries, Dongshik took out the letter entrusted by Sejun Park. However, seeing the envelope in his hands, the family mistakenly thought it was their son's will, and tears began to flow from their eyes. Dongshik quickly stood up to clarify that it was not a will but a large sum of money sent by Sejun Park, and he also informed Sejun Park's family that he was doing very well in the tower and there was no need to worry about him. Once reassured, the family's mood lightened. Next, Dongshik learned from Sejun Park's brother, Sidol, that Sejun Park had been missing for the last 5 months, which made him even more convinced that Sejun Park was a once-in-a-century genius hunter. In the 10 years since the tower appeared, no one had achieved such rapid progress. After explaining everything, Dongshik began to say goodbye to to Sejun Park's family. Once he got into the car outside, the contract task he had signed earlier was completed. Meanwhile, and the little cat Teo was still on his way to the cave. Another 2 days passed, and in the cave, Sejun Park was planting the tops of carrots. He soaked the carrot tops left by the rabbits in water, and once they sprouted, he planted them all in the ground, doing this also to collect seeds after they bloomed. Looking at the previously planted carrots now blooming, both Sejun Park and the little rabbits were very happy, enjoying the feeling of gradual progress. Just then, the administrator inquired whether the dried sweet potatoes were ready. Sejun Park also wanted to know, so he got up to check. Approaching the drying sweet potatoes, he gently picked one up and immediately popped it into his mouth. The taste of the dried sweet potatoes did not disappoint him. Their crispy texture combined with just the right amount of sugar made them exceptionally delicious. The little rabbits also quickly grabbed the treats to enjoy, and everyone was satisfied with the result. Sejun Park then planned to make more next time. However, being too immersed in the deliciousness caused Sejun Park to forget about the administrator. As he was about to take a bunch of dried sweet potatoes to her, Sejun Park suddenly thought of something and asked the administrator to wait a little longer. After all, every container had been made from green onions, which Sejun Park felt was somewhat improper. Seeing this, the black dragon Aileen thought he was reluctant to give her any, and so she urged him angrily. But when Sejun Park had the dried sweet potatoes nicely packaged in gift bags, the administrator was instantly stunned. This was a skill Sejun Park had learned from a part-time job he had done before. The dried sweet potatoes were now beautifully packaged, which also made it more convenient for the administrator to store. Sejun Park thought the administrator would like it, but unexpectedly, there was no prompt in the message. It was only when Aileen realized it that she then expressed her gratitude to Sejun Park. Seeing this, Sejun Park thought he might have been misunderstood as wasting food, but what he didn't expect was that Aileen was now touched by the sweet potato gift pack, as she had never seen such adorable packaging. It looked so nice that Aileen did not want to eat it. However, Sejun Park and his friends did not have this kind of trouble. They kept eating the dried sweet potatoes. While eating, the queen honeybee suddenly flew up to Sejun Park, bringing a cluster of crystalline pollen. Through a message, Sejun Park learned that it was a cornflower pollen ball. The corn he had planted before had grown up and even blossomed with many flowers. Cornflowers don't produce honey, so the honeybees were collecting pollen. Sejun Park still wanted to taste it, so he decisively put one into his mouth. The pollen cluster was slightly bitter and very sweet, much like eating cotton candy, and it tasted quite good. The affirmed queen honeybee no longer hesitated and immediately encouraged the little bees to collect more energetically. In just a few minutes, Sejun Park had gathered many pollen balls in his hands. Meanwhile, Teo, who had been away on business, finally returned, but upon seeing the queen honeybee next to Sejun Park, the little cat trembled with fear. Seeing this, Sejun Park quickly comforted Teo, telling him not to be afraid. The queen honeybee also moved forward to make friends with the cat, and Teo cautiously sniffed at her, but the next second he couldn't stop sneezing because it turned out Teo was allergic to pollen. Watching the little cat recover, Sejun Park then inquired about the completion of its task. Teo confidently responded to him, and even the matter of reassuring Sejun Park's family had been well arranged by him. At this moment, seeing that the contract package had been completed, Sejun Park thought that his family must have already received the money and news. Teo also mentioned that he would go to confirm with Dongshik in a few days. Having been separated from his family for so long, Sejun Park missed them dearly. His family probably couldn't imagine that he had become a farmer in the tower. If his brother Seedall knew, he would probably tease him mercilessly. Recalling the happy times with his family, Sejun Park felt increasingly melancholic. Just then, a little hand interrupted Sejun Park's thoughts. Unnoticed, the little family from the farm had gathered around, all looking at Sejun Park happily. Seeing this, Sejun Park instantly cleared away his gloom, realizing he also had many family members here. After comforting each other, Teo excitedly reported on the results of selling magic cherry tomatoes. After deducting the costs for various expenses and the payment to Dongshik, there were still over 200 dungeon coins left. Then, the little cat poured out all of its earnings from the bag. Seeing this, Sejun Park excitedly picked up the cast iron saucepan. It had been a long time since he had touched proper kitchenware. However, at that moment, a dagger on the ground caught his attention. This was the first weapon Sejun Park had seen since entering the tower, but the blank information bar left him clueless about its details. Teo had simply found it appealing in a clearance sale and brought it back. At this time, the administrator offered to inspect it, but asked for dried sweet potatoes as payment. Although Sejun Park knew the administrator was just craving them, he agreed to her terms. Now, he could only rely on her to inspect it. In just a few seconds, the administrator indicated that the task was complete. The next second, the dagger reappeared. This weapon turned out to be a B-grade item with a speed plus 5% attribute, which could help the user increase their skill proficiency faster. What really surprised Sejun Park was that the equipment also had a name, Kane's Training Dagger. Named equipment typically has a value of hundreds of millions in the outside world, yet such a a valuable weapon had been casually brought back by Teo from a clearance sale. He had originally thought the little cat was just a naive pushover, but it turned out he had brilliant talent. After receiving the dagger, Sejun Park placed it on the leeks in front of him, then positioned himself and quickly chopped the leeks into many pieces. With this equipment, the speed of future harvests would see a significant improvement. Looking back at Teo, Sejun Park couldn't help but praise that the equipment was indeed very handy. Happy, he couldn't help but move forward to play with the little cat's paw pads. Although Teo seemed resistant on the surface, deep down he was secretly delighted because Sejun Park, like other humans, liked his paws. Next came Teo's CEO time, and the little cat smugly let Sejun Park feed him cat treats. But Teo's appearance was quite cheeky, and soon Sejun Park put the little cat down on the ground, cheekily telling Teo that time was up. Hearing this, the little cat naturally didn't want to agree, but still couldn't change the stubborn Sejun Park. Angered, Teo decided to pull out his trump card. He brought out all the spices he had obtained in exchange for photos. Seeing this, Sejun Park instantly trembled. Listening to the little cat's proud words, Sejun Park poured some of the salt into his palm and lightly tasted it with his tongue. The fresh salty flavor made Sejun Park feel alive for the first time. There was also pepper and other spices, truly flavors long missed. Seeing Sejun Park so excited, Teo asked if these were enough to make him the CEO for 2 hours. Hearing this, Sejun Park lifted the little cat happily and spun around, saying, "Forget 2 hours, you can be the CEO for 24 hours. The next morning, a rich aroma drifted within the cave, attracting the little rabbits who were still sleeping. Seeing that most of his friends were awake, Sejun Park called them to come for breakfast. He had gotten up early today to prepare food. By the fire, there were already many grilled snacks laid out. Sejun Park had also prepared skewers with only salt and others with only pepper. After the little rabbits tried them, it was clear they were not accustomed to the pepper, except for Black Warrior Bunny, who relished his meal. Seeing Teo the CEO still asleep, Sejun Park took the skewers to wake him for breakfast. Unexpectedly, the little cat's hair instantly stood up in anger because Sejun Park had tampered with the sacred grilled fish. Teo preferred plain grilled fish and was not interested in those seasoned with salt or pepper. After breakfast, they started another day of labor. With Kane's dagger, Sejun Park not only doubled his harvesting speed, but also his skill familiarity surged. After picking, he handed the harvest to Teo. However, the little cat pouted, complaining that although he was supposedly the CEO, but he had to participate in picking too. Hearing this, Sejun Park was displeased because he was the president and was also working. Teo was dumbfounded, only then understanding that Sejun Park's position was higher than that of a CEO, so he too had to obediently work. With his bag packed, Teo set off full of confidence, thinking that when he becomes president, he will monopolize Sejun Park's lap and petting. Thinking this, the little cat set out on its business journey. Before leaving, Sejun Park instructed it to bring back some stuff from the shopping district and something from the blacksmith's clearance sale when it returned. Hearing this, Teo readily agreed and then jumped out of the cave, waving goodbye. Continuing the harvest, Sejun Park checked and saw that they had gained 90 points of experience, but had only harvested 6 magic cherry tomatoes. Upon closer inspection, it turned out that the level of the magic cherry tomatoes had been upgraded to D grade, a benefit of his recent promotion to a D grade farmer. Unfortunately, Teo left too quickly, otherwise the doubled effect D grade magic cherry tomatoes could have sold for a much higher price. Meanwhile, at the top of the Black Tower, Administrator Aileen pushed open the golden doors filled with treasures. At the deepest part, there was a lifelike statue made of extremely rare materials, whose value was beyond monetary measurement. However, the next second, Aileen directly shattered the statue with one swipe of her claw, and then placed the dried sweet potato gift pack sent by Sejun Park on top of it. It turns out the storeroom was enchanted with a permanent preservation spell, and Aileen intended to keep the sweet potato gift pack, not eat it, because it was a gift from Sejun Park, and she couldn't bear to treat it as just a snack. Seeing Sejun Park sleeping unsuspectingly, Aileen kindly decided to scout around for him. However, just as she started to check the surroundings, she spotted something out of the ordinary. At that moment, outside in the forest surrounding the cave, a small red bear seemed to have sniffed something unusual and slowly began to approach forward. Aileen quickly woke up Sejun Park, warning him that danger was approaching and he couldn't go back to sleep. Sejun Park slowly lifted his head and soon noticed a red shadow above, mistaking it for a ferocious monster arriving. Aileen surprisingly appeared in front of the monster, urging the crimson grizzly cub to go away, but unexpectedly, her messages scared the little red bear. The next second, the bear slipped and fell, and Sejun Park, realizing something was wrong, quickly put on his shoes and ran forward, catching the falling red bear with precision. At that moment, he thought it was a small cat or dog, but looking down, Sejun Park realized he was greatly mistaken because the message indicated that what he was holding was actually a crimson grizzly cub. Sejun Park didn't expect that the fierce monster he had encountered before had such a cute and small cub. Then, the black Black Tower's administrator asked Sejun Park why he caught the bear. Sejun Park explained that the situation was very dangerous, and if he hadn't caught it, the bear might have been badly hurt from the fall. Hearing this, the Black Dragon instructed Sejun Park to quickly send it outside because the mother Crimson Grizzly Bear might be looking for it. But Sejun Park was very concerned. There were other monsters outside, and the Crimson Grizzly Cub was still too young. Sending it out directly could be dangerous. Seeing this, the administrator hastily warned that the Crimson Grizzly Bears has a large appetite. Sejun Park didn't believe it, as the little red bear was still so small. The Crimson Grizzly Cub then ran behind Black Warrior Bunny, who also found the little one quite adorable. Just then, the Queen Honeybee came with the little bees to start working. Smelling the Queen Honeybee's scent, the Crimson Grizzly Cub took small steps forward, but its behavior angered the surrounding bees. Seeing the hostile honeybees, the Crimson Grizzly Cub quickly ran back to seek Sejun Park's protection. With no other choice, Sejun Park had to soothe the little bees. Immediately, Sejun Park asked the Queen Honeybee for help. Although disturbed by this reckless little one, the Queen Honeybee still agreed. Then she spat out honey from her mouth and placed it into the Crimson Grizzly Cub's paws. The sticky honey made the Crimson Grizzly Cub widen its eyes, likely because it had smelled the honey and come here. In a few seconds, the dark red Crimson Grizzly Cub had eaten all the honey cleanly. Seeing this, administrator remained silent, but soon she could no longer tolerate it. At that moment, the administrator issued a task. Aileen asked Sejun Park to quickly send the Crimson Grizzly Cub away, with a stern warning: refuse and starve. Soon, all the food would be eaten, and the fate of him and the little rabbits would be to starve. Meanwhile, the administrator was very dissatisfied with the Crimson Grizzly Cub. Sejun Park felt she was being too stingy. The other party was still so small. How much could it possibly eat? Nevertheless, in Sejun Park's view, if the administrator hadn't scared it initially, the Crimson Grizzly Cub wouldn't have slipped down. Hearing this, the administrator took it as a mistake and still ordered Sejun Park to immediately expel the Crimson Grizzly Cub. The scared dark red Crimson Grizzly Cub clung tightly to Sejun Park, looking at the pitiful little one. After some thought, Sejun Park decided to wait until its mother arrived before sending it away. Sejun Park's refusal stunned Aileen, who thought her kindness was misunderstood as pettiness. Aileen then no longer insisted and decided to let the matter go. Meanwhile, Sejun Park was still muttering under his breath, convinced that the administrator was worried about her food being shared. After Black Dragon Aileen left, Sejun Park happily held the Crimson Grizzly Cub, which had fallen asleep by this time. Seeing this, Sejun Park was even more resolved to let it stay overnight in the cave. Early the next morning, while Sejun Park was still fast asleep, a red figure lingered near the storage area. Soon after, Black Warrior Bunny groggily opened the door but was instantly wide awake upon seeing what was in front of him. Quickly, the noise inside the cave drew Sejun Park's attention. By the time he woke up, he discovered that the Crimson Grizzly Cub was gone. Looking at his angry friends, Sejun Park curiously asked what had happened, but soon he understood the reason. The ground was littered with remnants of food, and the stored crops had almost completely disappeared, with the innocent-looking Crimson Grizzly Cub being the main culprit. Looking at the sorry state of the storage, Sejun Park was almost in tears, and the little rabbits were furious, but the Crimson Grizzly Cub was still busily rummaging and eating. Apart from the magic cherry tomatoes, nearly all the sweet potatoes and carrots that Sejun Park had painstakingly planted had been eaten. After being severely punished by the little rabbits, the Crimson Grizzly Cub hurriedly pounced towards Sejun Park. Seeing the tearful Crimson Grizzly Cub, Sejun Park scooped it up, but quickly realized indeed that it had a huge appetite. Now Sejun Park finally remembered the administrator's advice and regretted not listening to Aileen earlier. Perhaps anticipating this, the administrator also informed Sejun Park at this time that the Crimson Grizzly Bears could easily consume several hundred pounds of food. Realizing that he had misunderstood the administrator, Sejun Park sincerely apologized and admitted his mistake, acknowledging that he should not have thought so little of the administrator. Aileen, however, was not concerned about this, but rather emphasized that the priority was to get the Crimson Grizzly Cub outside. After some thought, Sejun Park applied the method he had previously thought of on the Crimson Grizzly Cub. He made long ropes out of green onions, and then securely tied the Crimson Grizzly Cub with them. At this point, the little rabbits above were also ready. When Sejun Park gave the command, the little bees in the middle of the rope began to pull hard on the Crimson Grizzly Cub, with the rabbit family outside also cheering them on. With the help of his little friends, the Crimson Grizzly Cub was slowly pulled out. The sudden sensation of weightlessness made the Crimson Grizzly Cub uncomfortable, and it began to struggle weakly. Seeing this, Sejun Park offered some sweet honey to soothe the bear. "You've been away for too long. It's time to go home and find your mom." As the bear calmed down and ate the honey, Sejun Park and the Queen Honeybee said their goodbyes, and the Crimson Grizzly Cub also responded to their kindness. After sending the bear off, Sejun Park completed the task, and his reward was acquiring the seed harvesting skill. After the bear had gone, the rabbit family all returned. Sejun Park intended to treat the hardworking good-looking little rabbits well, but his own stomach growled. With a soft sigh, he decided to settle for some magic cherry tomatoes and grilled fish for the day. A few days later, inside the cave farm, Sejun Park and his friends fearfully watched the entrance as the crimson grizzly cub was cheerfully greeting them, but behind it loomed a terrifying crimson grizzly bear. Sejun Park was now stunned, thinking the bear had come to capture him and his friends. Watching the enormous creature overhead, Sejun Park and his friends were terrified. He suspected that the giant bear thought he had kidnapped the cub, so it was now here to prey on them. At this thought, Sejun Park couldn't stop trembling, and then he suddenly knelt down, saying that he is not tasty because all he has been eating were tomatoes, which caused the mother crimson grizzly bear to make a puzzled noise. Fortunately, the administrator conveyed that the crimson grizzly bear had no malicious intent. She only wanted to feed her child some honey. Understanding the administrator's explanation, Sejun Park also realized the bear's intentions. The crimson grizzly bear confirmed the administrator's explanation, and she and the crimson grizzly cub greeted Sejun Park and the others from outside. As a reward for the honey, the crimson grizzly bear was willing to protect the area from harm and also to take Sejun Park out of the cave. Immediately, she placed her huge bear paw inside the cave. Seeing this, Sejun Park turned back to look at his friends, and the rabbits were all happy for him. Thus, Sejun Park agreed to the crimson grizzly bear's request, and he sat on the mother crimson grizzly bear's paw, then slowly headed towards the outside of the cave. Below, Black Warrior Bunny waved his hands, marking Sejun Park's first departure from the cave. Looking down at all the crops in the farm from above, Sejun Park felt grateful. Without his friends, he probably would have starved inside. Now, Sejun Park looked out at the outside world full of hope, finally able to see the real world inside the tower. Just out of the cave, the brightness outside made it hard for Sejun Park to adapt for a moment. Once he adjusted, he took just one look and was deeply captivated by the world outside. Rolling mountains rose and fell, and in the distance stood a skyscraping tower reaching into the clouds. Sejun Park was completely stunned by the scene before him. This was just one floor of the Black Tower, but the area was already too vast for him to see the end. This is the true appearance of the Black Tower. Sejun Park sincerely thanked the mother crimson grizzly bear for bringing him out, and a distant shining light caught his attention. Seeing this, the administrator appeared in a timely manner, telling Sejun Park that it was a waypoint used for moving between the floors. Just as roaming merchants have their exclusive peddler pathways, adventurers coming from outside the tower have their own exclusive teleportation devices. If he could use the waypoint, he would likely be able to quickly reach the first level, and then successfully leave the tower. But Sejun Park had a new question: how to get there? Crossing the barren land ahead by foot seemed impractical. After coming down from the giant crimson grizzly bear's paw, the crimson grizzly cub pounced towards Sejun Park. Sejun Park caught the crimson grizzly cub in his arms and asked if the crimson grizzly bear could take him to the waypoint. To this, the crimson grizzly bear's response was a refusal, as the barren land was not her territory. To reach the waypoint, he would have to kill about 3,000 monsters. Seeing this, Sejun Park remembered that this was the 99th floor, which inevitably housed many powerful monsters. The crimson grizzly bear also pointed to the forest behind them, indicating that the area was her territory and that the monsters from the barren lands usually wouldn't come here. But if they left, the crimson grizzly bear could not protect Sejun Park. Understanding the situation, Sejun Park could only sigh softly. He was very grateful to them. The crimson grizzly cub looked at Black Warrior Bunny and also hugged it excitedly. Watching the crimson grizzly cub, now even bigger than himself, Black Bunny slowly stroked its head. The crimson grizzly bear wanted her child to eat something at that moment, and Sejun Park, realizing this, reached into his bag and pulled out some honey. Smelling the aroma, the crimson grizzly cub instantly turned around, eyes sparkling as it watched the sweet honey slowly flow out, and then it began to lick the honey contentedly. At this time, Sejun Park noticed the mother crimson grizzly bear's longing. He intended to share the honey with the crimson grizzly bear, but she declined. She said she didn't need any, just to give a little more to the cub. Food was scarce in the forest, which hindered the cub's proper growth. Yet after spending a day on Sejun Park's farm, her baby had grown a lot. Sejun Park and the queen honeybee pondered the words of the crimson grizzly bear. After all, the cost of growing quickly was the consumption of the food they had painstakingly stored. The giant bear also mentioned that honey was the most helpful, making the queen honeybee a bit shy with the praise. Now aware of the scarcity of food in the forest and the administrator's earlier comments about the crimson grizzly bear's large appetite, Sejun Park asked the mother crimson grizzly bear if she hadn't eaten today, but the situation was more complicated than Sejun Park thought. In order to find this cave, the giant bear had gone hungry for 3 whole days. Seeing the pitiful mother crimson grizzly bear, Sejun Park decided to make some delicious food to fill her stomach. Beside him, Black Warrior Bunny was also full of confidence. Next, Sejun Park took charge of cooking. After receiving the items Teo brought, he became even more diligent in the kitchen. Upon returning to the cave, Black Bunny quickly caught a lot of fresh fish, while Sickle Rabbit assisted Sejun Park in preparing the side dishes. Under Sejun Park's meticulous cooking, delicious fish soup was soon ready. After taking a light sip, he declared this batch of food perfect. In addition to the fish soup, there were various types of grilled fish. Looking at the steaming food in front of them, the mother crimson grizzly bear and the crimson grizzly cub were drooling. Sejun Park prepared a nutritious tomato and carrot fish stew to nourish the mother crimson grizzly bear's body. In gratitude to Sejun Park and his friends, the crimson grizzly bear happily embraced them. Meanwhile, Aileen was observing the situation outside. It turned out that she had noticed the crimson grizzly cub that was sent out days ago. She had initially worried that the cub would call its mother to attack humans, but instead, the crimson grizzly bear just wanted to establish friendly relations with humans. So, she stepped forward early to offer help to the mother crimson grizzly bear by interpreting for them, and the outcome was perfect, as evidenced by the beautiful scene outside the cave. Moreover, if she could expand the planting area outside the cave, her food supply would increase, and with the protection of the crimson grizzly bear, her worries would diminish. Thinking about how she facilitated this wonderful life, Black Dragon Aileen couldn't help but praise her own cleverness. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Peddlers Association Investigation Bureau, Jairus was reading through Teo's various files, but the information was incomplete. Not only was there no connection with Scaram, but it also mentioned that Teo's business skills were weak. However, from the sales chart, Jairus learned that the little cat's recent sales were very high, making her curious about what kind of methods he possessed. Just then, Jairus' subordinate brought in a new mission: to catch a thief for greed, a wealthy merchant on floor 55 who had lost many treasures. Hearing that it was the notorious and scrupulous farm owner, Jairus' expression turned cold. After briefly reviewing the list of lost items, her dissatisfaction with the bureau chief grew. Having the supervisory bureau handle a theft seemed excessive. Soon after, Jairus' door was opened again, and a dog detective brought news that Teo was on floor 75. Hearing this, Jairus quickly sat up straight and told her subordinates that those task lists would be handled when she returned, as she had more important things to do now. Jairus once again donned her novice peddler disguise, vowing to thoroughly investigate Teo's situation. Unaware of this, the little cat continued blissfully buying skewers. Back in the cave, today was the third day of their agreement, and the mother crimson grizzly bear came early in the morning to take Sejun Park out of the cave. After arriving outside, Sejun Park handed over a large pack of food to the crimson grizzly bear, which was meant for her to eat while patrolling the area. After entrusting her cub to Sejun Park for care, she would immediately go to patrol of the surroundings. As for Sejun Park and the little rabbits, they were moving luggage outside while cultivating the land outside the cave, but the soil outside was drastically different from inside the cave. Compared to the fertile soil inside, this land had many more pebbles, which made it difficult for crops to grow. Just as Sejun Park was feeling troubled, an unusual sound came from behind him. Turning around, he saw the crimson grizzly cub working hard to till the soil. Seeing this, Sejun Park came up with a solution to the soil quality issue. The crimson grizzly cub was tasked with loosening the soil and flipping out the pebbles, while he and the little rabbits would remove the stones. Knowing that the crimson grizzly cub had already been working hard for a long time, Sejun Park rewarded it with a baked sweet potato. Seeing the crimson grizzly cub, now nearly as tall as himself, Sejun Park couldn't help but marvel at its rapid growth. After treating a small portion of the land, it was now suitable for planting crops. However, due to the poor soil quality, only root crops could be planted. As for the magic cherry tomatoes, he would have to assess the condition of the land later. The crimson grizzly cub ate the sweet potato that Sejun Park had planted, ruining all the planting. Seeing this, Sejun Park quickly intervened to stop the crimson grizzly cub. Otherwise, the land that had been prepared would need to be dug over again. After being scolded by Sejun Park, the crimson grizzly cub understood its mistake. Thus, Sejun Park decided to patiently teach the crimson grizzly cub how to care for plants, otherwise the difficulty of future planting would increase significantly. A few days earlier, Teo had arrived at the 38th floor of the Black Tower with magic cherry tomatoes. This time, he brought 1,800 magic cherry tomatoes, with each batch starting at 300 pieces for auction. Although the adventurers still engaged in fierce competition, since the last big spender hadn't shown up, the amount sold was much less. As Teo was leaving, Dongshik hurriedly stepped forward to confirm that the contract had been fulfilled. To Teo's confusion, Dongshik did not participate in the auction for the magic cherry tomatoes. Hearing this, Dongshik coughed awkwardly a few times, saying that this time he needed something else. He then pulled out his phone from his waist and explained that his daughter likes cats, so he wanted some pictures of Teo. The little cat decisively agreed, and Dongshik also produced the payment required for taking photos. He had heard that Teo needed some miscellaneous items, so he brought some gochugaru chili pepper flakes. Unexpectedly, as soon as Teo took it, he tasted a few mouthfuls, and the next second, the little cat was spicy enough to jump up and even screamed in pain. After slowly recovering, Teo and Dongshik left the 38th floor separately. A few days later, Teo arrived on the 75th floor, where he was upgrading his rucksack in the shop. After the upgrade was completed, the little cat went out while his tongue was still numb from the spice. To upgrade the rucksack, Teo spent all the commissions given by Sejun Park. Fortunately, after the capacity was increased, he could carry hundreds more magic cherry tomatoes. In this way, not only could he quickly earn 1,000 dungeon coins, but he even hoped to go further and reach the position of president. Next, Teo only needed to buy equipment before he could go back, but suddenly a fragrant aroma attracted the little cat. Looking closely, Teo noticed the grilled skewer stall ahead. The greedy cat immediately walked up, ready to use the food to soothe its injured tongue. Looking at a skewer of grilled small fish in the middle, Teo inquired about the price, and upon learning it was 1 dungeon coin, he naturally asked the owner to give a discount. Unexpectedly, the owner actually agreed, and just like that, the little cat happily went to buy equipment with the grilled fish. Halfway there, a merchant blocked Teo's path. Upon recognizing him, Teo immediately realized it was the same person who had almost been tricked by Scaram before. Hearing Teo call her a sucker, Jairus was even more furious, but she still introduced herself to the little cat. Teo wanted to know why she was looking for him, and seeing his urgency, Jairus quickly said that she wanted to thank him for his help last time by inviting him to a meal. Jairus thought Teo would agree immediately, but the little cat turned around and refused right away. She then insisted, saying that even a simple cup of tea would do. Teo still refused, as he couldn't drink hot things. Jairus then offered something else to invite Teo, but this not only failed to keep the little cat, it also made Teo feel she was too clingy. Jairus grit her teeth, and then she decided to play her trump card. The next second, Jairus was kneeling in front of Teo, begging him to listen to her for a few moments. The sudden scene also scared the little cat. Jairus then pretended to be pitiful and explained her situation. She had recently become a peddler, but was not very capable. Fortunately, Teo had helped her see through Scaram last time, so she was very grateful for Teo's generous help. Therefore, she wanted to learn business know-how from the little cat, and she clearly stated that Teo was a respectable great peddler. Hearing this, Teo was instantly flattered, and the little cat's ears couldn't stop wiggling. Teo enjoyed the title of great peddler and decided to share some secrets with Jairus. The scheming Jairus was secretly pleased with herself. After agreeing, Teo told Jairus to get up quickly, as there were many onlookers around. Now, Jairus wanted to know where Teo was headed. Learning that the little cat was going to the blacksmith shop, Jairus's face immediately showed confusion. She wanted to know more, but Teo just told Jairus to watch and learn. Before long, they arrived on Merchant Street on the 75th floor, where some of the goods greatly impressed Jairus. She even pointed out to Teo that the shop next door had many top-tier items, but Teo pretended to be profound and said he does not buy ordinary things. His words made Jairus take notice. After walking a few more meters, Teo reached his destination. Seeing the sign above, Jairus also had some impression. At this moment, the little cat knocked on the shop door, and only after entering the shop did Jairus remember the introduction about this shop. It was a clearance warehouse that sold random unverified scraps. She really did not know what kind of secrets could be taught here. Teo now asked the shop owner if the prices of these items were fixed. After receiving a positive response, the shop owner allowed Teo to pick anything he wanted, as everything was on clearance and all priced the same. But in the next moment, the little cat forcefully slapped the counter, and Teo asked the owner to make it cheaper. This statement immediately shocked Jairus. Was this the so-called secret? She really did not expect that even at clearance prices, the little cat could still haggle. What surprised her even more was that the owner really did reduce the price by 2 dungeon coins. But Teo was not satisfied and continued to ask the owner to lower the price even more. Only then did the owner look up at Teo, never having seen such a bold cat. But the little cat said he would become a regular customer and asked the owner to sell it to him for 13 dungeon coins. Perhaps amused by Teo's manner, the owner agreed to sell it to him. Now Teo turned and proudly looked at Jairus, and the little fox quickly praised how impressive he was. But in Jairus's eyes, Teo's bargaining was simply obnoxious. Next, Jairus asked the little cat which piece of equipment he wanted to take. After thinking for a few seconds, Teo picked up an old box from the corner and took out a very ordinary straw hat from inside. Seeing this, Jairus quickly tried to stop the little cat because the straw hat was clearly a useless item by any standard. Upon hearing this, the owner immediately became unhappy and coldly asked if Jairus had a problem with his store. At this point, the little fox realized, and even Teo thought she was being too rude. Immediately, Jairus respectfully apologized to the owner, although she did not understand why she was doing so. Teo, having obtained the straw hat, was not displeased with it. The item was exactly to his liking. After purchasing the items, they left the blacksmith shop. Having packed the items, Teo felt he had imparted the essence of his knowledge to Jairus, so he said it was also time for him to leave. As they were parting, the little cat wished Jairus good luck with her peddling career. It was only after Teo had gone some distance that Jairus came to her senses, but she did not follow him again, as that would seem too suspicious. Just as Jairus was preparing to investigate later, she suddenly thought of something and hurriedly turned around, carefully observing the straw hat in Teo's hands as he left. At this moment, she finally remembered the task issued by the director earlier. The straw hat was one of the items lost by a wealthy man. Seeing this, Jairus was stunned, She did not expect such a coincidence. A few days later in the Black Tower Cave, Sejun Park was still patiently collecting carrot seeds. The stock of carrots had decreased significantly, causing the little rabbits to start feeling anxious. Next, Sejun Park needed to collect more seeds, planting half outside and the other half inside the cave. Having worked all morning, it was soon time for lunch. Black Warrior Bunny and Cart Bunny had already prepared fresh fish, and today Sejun Park decided to have fish soup with his friends. However, Mrs. Rabbit recently lost her appetite. Therefore, he went to pick tomatoes to make some appetizing food, leaving the fresh fish for Sickle Bunny to handle. Sejun Park arrived at the farm and picked a bunch of fresh magic cherry tomatoes. At this time, his harvesting skill also reached level 4, gaining an additional effect. Besides the original ability to bring unripe fruit to ripeness sooner, it now also increased the probability of upgrading the crop's quality. Although it stated that the probability was extremely low, it was better than nothing. If he could unexpectedly obtain higher quality magic cherry tomatoes, that would be ideal. Sejun Park didn't expect to get an additional effect upon reaching level 4 of his harvesting skill, but he was brought back to reality by Mr. Rabbit's voice. Now was not the time to be distracted. He needed to focus on preparing the nutritional meals for the pregnant rabbit. After Sejun Park's cooking, a healthy fish soup was quickly ready. He had carefully prepared it for Mrs. Rabbit, and it was very refreshing and nourishing. Sejun Park specifically instructed Mr. Rabbit to take good care of Mrs. Rabbit, and as for the farm work, they had several people to handle it, so there was no need to worry. After all, the due date was approaching, and he believed that the little rabbits would soon meet their siblings. Just then, the Crimson Grizzly Cub arrived outside and happily greeted Sejun Park. So, Sejun Park picked up the food and tools, and he and the 3 little rabbits went out to work and eat, leaving the indoor crops to be managed by Cart Bunny and Sickle Bunny. With a full box of food securely tied, Sejun Park grasped the rope made of green onions, then gestured to the Crimson Grizzly Cub that it could start pulling. Upon receiving the instructions, the deep red Crimson Grizzly Cub began to pull on the rope forcefully, using a large rock outside the cave. Now, the Crimson Grizzly Cub did not need to use much strength, so Sejun Park did not have to operate the manual rope with the Crimson Grizzly Cub. The little rabbits could jump out. In no time, the Crimson Grizzly Cub had pulled him outside, and the little rabbits followed by jumping out. The large rock outside the cave was moved there at Sejun Park's request by Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear to make a manual elevator, so each time the Crimson Grizzly Cub would pull up the lunch and Sejun Park together. Originally, Sejun Park just wanted to find any rock, but Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear brought a huge boulder. Perhaps because this is the 99th floor, Sejun Park seemed to understand. At this moment, he praised the Crimson Grizzly Cub for pulling faster than yesterday. Sejun Park thought the bear cub was eager to see him quicker, but it turned out that the cub was staring at the breakfast in the box. Today, Sejun Park had prepared a box full of roasted sweet potatoes, which he had specifically saved from last night. Seeing this, the Crimson Grizzly Cub was already drooling, and soon it was gobbling up the baked sweet potatoes. In just a few minutes, there was only one left inside, and the Crimson Grizzly Cub stopped eating because it remembered the little rabbit's teachings. Then the Crimson Grizzly Cub took the baked sweet potato in its mouth, jumped out, and started digging something in the ground ahead. Sejun Park and the little rabbits were all puzzled, and then the Crimson Grizzly Cub gestured. It turned out it wanted to plant the baked sweet potato in the ground, and then wait for it to grow before eating it again. The Crimson Grizzly Cub proudly patted its work, but this amused Sejun Park and the little rabbits, bursting out in laughter. Sejun Park then told the Crimson Grizzly Cub that cooked things planted in the ground will not grow. Upon hearing this, the Crimson Grizzly Cub was shocked by this information, but Sejun Park was then stunned, because when he turned his head, he found a fish head buried in the ground, and, even more, many piranhas planted by the Crimson Grizzly Cub ahead. Seeing this, Sejun Park and his friends was in disbelief, realizing it was time to give the Crimson Grizzly Cub a proper lesson. The Crimson Grizzly Cub next to him also felt very disappointed. It had planted the food, but its own stomach was growling with hunger. Meanwhile, inside the beehive in the cave, the queen honeybee seemed to be troubled as she silently observed the cocoon of a new poison honeybee. The next day, the Crimson Grizzly Cub got ready, with Black Warrior Bunny positioned below, preparing for the battle. They were about to attack simultaneously. The Crimson Grizzly Cub suddenly pounced towards Warrior Black Rabbit, but the agile Black Warrior Bunny simply made a small jump, successfully dodging it, and then quickly tapped the Crimson Grizzly Cub a few times. Just when Black Rabbit thought he had won, a chubby paw struck from behind, and the next second, the Crimson Grizzly Cub had Black Bunny in its arms, vigorously rubbing him. Sejun Park, watching their so-called battle training, found it quite amusing, as Black Bunny and the Crimson Grizzly Cub's fight seemed more like playing. At that moment, Cart Bunny also brought over some drinks. Seeing this, Sejun Park gratefully said, "Thank you, I was just getting thirsty." Unexpectedly, Cart Bunny was as heartwarming as ever. Sejun Park had only taken a few sips when he suddenly suddenly noticed that the little honeybees had flown out. It seemed that the poison bees were starting their patrol for the day. He intended to remind them to be safe, but unexpectedly, the queen honeybee also came outside the cave. Seeing this, Sejun Park was very surprised, because the queen honeybee should be laying eggs at this time. Slowly flying in front of Sejun Park, the queen honeybee carefully placed something in his hands and even bowed to Sejun Park, with the surrounding little bees also imploring him. After thanking Sejun Park, the queen honeybee led the little bees on their patrol. Although he did not understand their exact intention, Sejun Park knew that what the queen honeybee gave must be very important. Slowly peeling back the tender green leaves, inside was a delicate and beautiful bee cocoon. According to the message prompt, this was actually a new queen poisonous honeybee's cocoon. Sejun Park realized why the queen honeybee was so cautious. There were only 10 days until hatching, and since the queen honeybee had only recently become a queen, her bee colony was not yet fully established. If a new queen honeybee were born in a bee nest, it could threaten her unstable base. That's why the queen honeybee entrusted the cocoon to Sejun Park for hatching. Understanding the intentions of the queen honeybee, Sejun Park instantly felt motivated. He wanted to take good care of this queen honeybee cocoon and then hatch it into a wonderful queen poisonous honeybee. Now, Sejun Park was hoping time would pass faster. He could hardly wait to meet the new queen honeybee. After some time, a bouncing little cat arrived near the cave, and Teo was in a good mood, about to reach the cave entrance, and he was also ready to continue enjoying the service he deserved from being Teo the CEO. However, when he arrived outside the cave, he saw an animal he had never seen before. Thinking it was a monster that came to harm the farm, Teo quickly called out to the crimson grizzly cub. When the crimson grizzly cub turned around, the little cat immediately noticed what was in its mouth. It recognized Sejun Park's bag. Coupled with the crimson grizzly cub's huge body, Teo mistakenly thought that Sejun Park had been eaten. The next second, the little cat knelt on the ground, deeply blaming himself, as he didn't expect to be too late. Coming back from the 38th floor, Teo had a bad premonition, so he hurried back this time. However, now he faced this outcome, and the little cat was extremely saddened because the time for enjoying being Teo the CEO had not been fully used. In anger, Teo directly lunged at the crimson grizzly cub, startling the little cub with his sudden action. However, before the little cat could touch the crimson grizzly cub, Sejun Park noticed Teo had returned and immediately joyfully called out to the little cat. Hearing the voice, Teo stopped his attack and gently landed on the ground, but the next second, he fiercely pounced on Sejun Park and then tightly hugged Sejun Park's head. He thought his partner had been eaten. Now, the little cat was carefully inspecting Sejun Park's entire body, especially his lap. If anything happened, it wouldn't be able to enjoy resting its head on Sejun Park's lap anymore. Seeing that Sejun Park was largely unharmed, it quickly asked about the crimson grizzly bear that had just appeared. So, Sejun Park took Teo up and explained the incident with the crimson grizzly cub and mentioned that they now have an arrangement with Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear. She keeps the cave safe, while the farm friends repay her with food. After hearing this, Teo finally breathed a sigh of relief, as it had been really scared just now. However, at this moment, Sejun Park suddenly thought of something. Calling them Crimson Grizzly Cub seemed like a mouthful. It would be convenient if they had names like Teo. Sejun Park then asked Teo to inquire if the Crimson Grizzly Cub had a name. Regarding this, the Crimson Grizzly Cub was unsure. It was just a bear cub. It didn't have a name. So, Sejun Park came up with a good idea for a temporary name. Hearing Sejun Park's words, the Crimson Grizzly Cub was instantly delighted, and little cat Teo was also curious about what good name Sejun Park had thought of. Then, Sejun Park announced it. Since the Crimson Grizzly Cub is a baby bear who keeps crying Bay, Sejun Park decided from now on, the bear cub would be called Bay. But as soon as this name was mentioned, everyone except Sejun Park, who was very proud, was dumbfounded. Teo even looked down on Sejun Park, thinking he was terrible at naming. Despite the cat's disdain, Sejun Park, not willing to admit defeat, asked the Crimson Grizzly Cub. After making the bear cub roll around on the ground, he proudly thought the Crimson Grizzly Cub had agreed. But Teo immediately interrupted Sejun Park, took out all the dungeon coins they had earned from this trip, and asked how long they could exchange for being Teo the CEO. Sejun Park praised the little cat and calculated a bit. Now, Teo had a total of 38 hours of Teo boss's time. Hearing this, the little cat immediately demanded Sejun Park to bring out the cat treats, as he was going to use up all the hours this time. The little cat was happily licking the cat treat, but just as the delightful moment began, a huge mouth pushed the little cat aside. It turned out to be Crimson Grizzly Cub licking Teo's cat treat. Seeing this, the little cat instantly flew into a rage. Fortunately, Sejun Park quickly intervened to hold Teo back, but the bear cub still got a fierce scratch from the cat. Immediately after, the Crimson Grizzly Cub sat down and began to cry loudly. Meanwhile, a huge tremor came from the forest, and suddenly a terrifying creature jumped out. Hearing her baby's cries, Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear leaped over to the scene. Seeing the huge dark shadow in the air, both Sejun Park and Teo were stunned. The next second, Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear landed precisely on the ground. Now now fiercely staring ahead, with the crimson grizzly cub protected beneath her. Sejun Park and his friends were blown back. Only Teo remained in place. Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear was now glaring intensely at the little cat below, with the crimson grizzly cub still crying softly. Sejun Park realized the situation was dire, and Teo was already trembling with fear as Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear was angrily staring at the little cat. Seeing this, Teo cautiously greeted the crimson grizzly bear, also clarifying that he was a peddler possessing the privilege of not being harmed by monsters, and that the incident with the crimson grizzly cub was just a misunderstanding. At this, Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear roared angrily at the cat, which instantly made Teo shiver with fright. After her anger subsided, Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear reminded Teo not to bully her child. The little cat, already frightened and disheveled, vowed to get along well with the crimson grizzly cub in the future. Sejun Park also helped explain for Teo, telling Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear that it was just a little argument and the crimson grizzly cub was fine. Seeing this, Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear calmed down a bit. Seeing that the crimson grizzly cub was unharmed, Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear then left to continue protecting the surroundings. Only now did everyone breathe a sigh of relief, while Teo started crying on the side. Sejun Park, fearing that the little cat had been frightened too much, immediately went forward to soothe it. He held Teo in his arms and said that it was also his fault, as he should have informed Teo earlier about the changes in the cave. Seeing the saddened cat, Black Warrior Bunny gently comforted Teo by licking him. The other little rabbits also didn't want to see the cat sad, so they came forward and joined Black Warrior Bunny in grooming Teo's fur. Soon enough, the little cat also started to smile. Sejun Park and his friends now hugged each other tightly, looking at the warm scene ahead. Crimson Grizzly Cub Bay also realized its mistake, so it slowly came in front of its friends and, like the little rabbits, comforted the little cat. Teo sincerely apologized to Bay, regretting that he had scratched it. After comforting each other, tired from the morning's events, they all seemed a bit weary. At that moment, Sejun Park and his friends yawned, and then they all closed their eyes to rest together. Hearing the noise outside, the rabbit couple in the cave, after managing their affairs, came outside the cave. Slowly climbing up, Mr. Rabbit found a rucksack left on the ground and picked up the straw hat that the little cat had bought. At this moment, Mrs. Rabbit signaled to Mr. Rabbit, for she had spotted Sejun Park and the children. The little friends ahead were actually sleeping together, leaning on each other's bodies, sleeping very comfortably and peacefully. Seeing this, the rabbit couple understood that they must have had a hard day. Thinking of the straw hat he had just picked up, Mr. Rabbit gently placed it on Sejun Park's head to shield him from the sun. They now leaned against the crimson grizzly cub, quietly enjoying the warmth of the moment. Perhaps feeling the presence of his friends nearby, the Sejun Park showed a hint of a happy smile. Meanwhile, outside the Black Tower space, a gathering of many huge black dragons was taking place, all staring at something at the center. An old man was seen desperately infusing magic into a glowing crystal, but the next second he was violently knocked back. Seeing this, the old man immediately became furious, not understanding why the Black Tower could not be opened. At this time, a handsome man pleaded with the old man to calm down. He was Eileen's father, Anton Pratani. Hearing this, the old man could not calm down at all, unable to see Aileen. Even Kaiser Pratani, the head of the Black Dragon family, could not help losing his temper. It had been 10 years since the last time Aileen had a seizure. They had finally found medicine for her, but unfortunately, they came back to a broken portal. Even the emergency system he had created was now unresponsive, and Kaiser had no way of knowing the situation inside. Hearing this, Anton saw it as good news. The emergency system not being triggered meant that Aileen was still alright. The black dragons nearby thought the same and together persuaded Kaiser not to be too anxious. Aileen was in the administrator's space in the Black Tower, the magical core that supports the operation of the tower, which was supposed to be managed in turns by all dragons to improve their strength. However, because of Eileen's unexpected illness, all the dragons had conceded their privilege of staying there. To find treatments and restore Eileen's dragon heart, they had to put themselves in harm's way. Anton said that everyone felt the same as Kaiser and that it was best to remain calm. Moreover, Anton believed in his daughter Aileen, who must be striving to overcome her illness. Hearing this, Kaiser also calmed his anxious emotions and then issued a command. Before the Black Tower opens, the dragons need not continue to assist him in forcibly opening the tower, and they could stand by until the tower opens. Soon, all the black dragons flew away from the area. After the other clan members had left, Anton thought that several days had passed since the last seizure, and perhaps Eileen's dragon heart had improved. Kaiser very much hoped for this outcome, but he had not seen his beloved granddaughter for so long. He didn't even know if Aileen was eating properly. Now, all Kaiser could do was silently pray for her. Unlike the concerns of the other dragons, at this moment, Aileen was blissfully eating snacks in the administrator's space. While eating, she was also reading a book, showing no signs of discomfort at all. The D-grade magic cherry tomatoes planted by Sejun Park behind her had a much richer taste than before. Previously, Aileen needed a mouthful to taste them, but now just a few were enough. But in the next second, Eileen's dragon heart heart, which had not beat for a long time, suddenly began to thump, causing her to immediately stop her actions. Aileen, in disbelief, placed her claw on her chest. Her dragon heart had not beat for 200 years, yet now it spontaneously pulsed and absorbed mana for a brief moment. Feeling the changes in her body, Aileen finally remembered she should have had a seizure already. After some thought, Aileen speculated it was the effect of the magic cherry tomatoes, because the magic cherry tomatoes have a slight effect on enhancing mana. Aileen initially thought they just tasted good, but after consuming a large amount of them, she discovered they also had an effect on healing the dragon heart. Thinking that she could slowly recover, Aileen couldn't help but feel overjoyed. She had finally gotten through the tough times and had found someone worth caring for. Now that her dragon heart had a chance to beat again, Aileen decided that she would be the one to protect the farmer, Sejun Park. In high spirits, she wanted to see what the farmer was up to now, and after checking, Aileen laughed. She saw that Sejun Park had fallen asleep, so she quickly woke him up. Woken up, Sejun Park was very puzzled because the notification indicated that he had an unverified item. After searching around, Sejun Park took a straw hat off his head, not knowing when it had been placed there. Mr. Rabbit then signaled to the rucksack, and seeing this, Sejun Park understood that this was an item Teo had brought back. Immediately, Sejun Park patted the little cat, but Teo still wanted to sleep a bit more. He then took out the straw hat to check the message panel, but the unverified item only showed some unclear skills and requirements of use. However, the Land's Blessing skill on it caught Sejun Park's attention. At this moment, Administrator Aileen suggested that Sejun Park let her inspect it. Seeing this, Sejun Park readily agreed and Aileen took the item from him. After warming up, Aileen gently lifted her dragon claw and then used the identification skill. As blue magic swirled around the straw hat, Aileen was immediately amazed and also congratulated Sejun Park on obtaining a quite impressive item. After the identification was complete, the administrator issued another task to promise that Sejun Park will offer the administrator a harvest with blue moon energy from the next blue moon. Seeing this, Sejun Park remembered that the next blue moon was not far off. Now that the farm had expanded significantly, he immediately agreed to Administrator Aileen's request. Hearing this, Aileen Pratani told Sejun Park her name and asked him to make a pinky promise with her. Initially, Sejun Park didn't think much of it. Seeing this, Aileen instantly became unhappy and even threatened him by asking if he no longer wanted the straw hat. Seeing the prompt above, Sejun Park instantly changed his expression and hurriedly said that knowing Aileen's name was a great honor for him. Then, Sejun Park slowly extended his pinky, promising that next time he would share a harvest with blue moon energy with Aileen. Aileen also raised her dragon claw. This was their first promise. The task was then completed. Through the prompt, Sejun Park learned that this was a relic of the saints and also one of the only 10 remaining saint relics in the Black Tower. At that moment, Sejun Park realized how remarkable the item brought back by the little cat Teo was. He had never heard of equipment named with the title of a relic before. After being identified, the minimum ability requirements for use disappeared, replaced by the stipulation that it could be used by those in the professions related to farming. The straw hat would advance as the wearer's level increased. Now, Sejun Park is a D-grade farmer, so the level of the straw hat has also been upgraded to D-grade. With the removal of various skill restrictions, the attribute panel of the straw hat now displays several additional skills, each with quite spectacular bonuses. Looking again at Teo, who is sound asleep, Sejun Park feels more certain that his judgment was correct. The little cat indeed has a golden touch. Happy, he couldn't help but go up and hug Teo, continuously kissing the little cat's paw pads. Seeing this, Teo was bewildered, not understanding what Sejun Park was doing. Seeing the little cat waking up, Sejun Park quickly told Teo that he would restore Teo's CEO privileges for the next week. Although unsure what was happening, Teo happily accepted the proposal, but now both Teo and Sejun Park are very excited. After many days, the little cat has through its own efforts once again become Teo the CEO. A few days later, in the cave, Cart Bunny was still eating. Black Warrior Bunny seemed completely uninterested. It was intensely focused on what was ahead, its little feet trembling non-stop. Not just Black Warrior Bunny, Sejun Park was also very nervous, and Teo, on Sejun Park's lap, was trembling severely because of it. Finally, Teo couldn't stand it anymore. He quickly asked Sejun Park to stop trembling. The other little friends were also lingering at Mrs. Rabbit's door. Teo, having waited for a long time, was now getting a bit hungry, so it asked Sejun Park for a cat treat. Just then, the wooden door that had been closed for so long finally opened. Sickle Bunny came out first, holding a small bundle. Seeing this, Sejun Park and his friends all wanted to know how many there were. When Sickle Bunny revealed the little rabbits in its arms, there were surprisingly 3 yellow babies. Then Mr. Rabbit also came out, holding 3 more rabbit babies. Now the 6 little rabbits were humming loudly, and the farm's little friends all gathered around them. Sejun Park planned to make some nutritious food for Mrs. Rabbit to help her recover. Seeing Teo standing far away, Sejun Park called him to come closer to see. This was the first time the little cat had seen rabbit babies, and the soft and delicate delicate appearance touched its heart. Sejun Park also told it that from now on, Teo would be the uncle of the little rabbits and must take good care of them. Hearing this, Teo immediately gained confidence, and then it took out a cat treat from its cloak, intending to give it to the baby rabbits. This gesture amused all the little friends. Although knowing Teo meant well, Sejun Park still told it that the babies were too small to eat cat treats. Fortunately, today was a very good day, so Sejun Park did not take away the cat treat Teo had secretly kept. Next, the little cat planned to take the babies out to play, and Sejun Park reminded them to return before dinner. Soon, the farm's little friends finished their dinner. The bees then began to gradually seal up their beehive, and the little rabbits also shut their doors tightly, while Sejun Park was likewise prepared to welcome tonight's blue moon. However, he was surprised to see Teo crawling into his own rucksack and curiously asked why. Hearing this, the little cat explained that its rucksack keeps him safe from the blue moon energy, so it wanted to hide inside. The rucksack of a peddler has many uses. The large ones can even be used as mansions. Thinking this over, Sejun Park asked Teo for a favor. He rummaged through his backpack and then handed over the cocoon of the queen poisonous honeybee. Sejun Park wanted to entrust it to Teo for safekeeping. After explaining the origin of the cocoon to the little cat, Teo was surprised, but upon learning it was the queen honeybee's child, it nestled it into its own fluffy fur. Meanwhile, monsters outside were becoming restless. The night's blue moon also arrived on time, its clear light enveloping the entire 99th floor. Sejun Park was now worried about Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear and Bay's situation, but then a tremendous noise came from outside. It was the first time Sejun Park had heard such a sound of trampling the land, and he suspected that other monsters had invaded Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear's territory. But before Sejun Park could put on his earmuffs, suddenly many loud bellowing moos of cows came from outside. After a few brief minutes, the noises began to diminish, which puzzled Sejun Park. Could there really be cows on the 99th floor? As the blue moon gradually faded, Sejun Park's farm was filled with crops imbued with blue moon energy. To his great surprise, he hadn't expected to receive so many fruits of the blue moon. Even the nearby cornfield was basking in the blue moon's glow. Seeing this, Sejun Park became even more excited, as he was likely going to eat corn infused with blue moon energy. After a brief thought, Sejun Park realized this must be the effect of the harvest blessing. The next morning, the cave returned to tranquility. Soon, the little cat poked its head out and looked around. Seeing no danger, Teo informed Sejun Park. Hearing this, he confidently climbed outside. The little cat thought it would be safer to wait for Mother Crimson Grizzly Bear to return, but Sejun Park decided to check things out himself. Since there had been monsters lingering around the farm last night, he wanted to inspect the outside conditions. Seeing this, Teo no longer resisted and said that he would accompany Sejun Park.